In our household, drugs was a daily occurrence. So we grew up with drugs. Every day, everyone in our house was doing drugs. So when I was 14, 15, I was used to drugs. It wasn't an illegal or abnormal lifestyle. But I kind of skipped all the basic drugs and went straight into ecstasy and cocaine and crack. And as you can imagine, those are not games you want to play. And I went down some dark roads with some dark people. And by God's grace, I was able to stop crack while others continued. And they ended up in prison, friends of mine, for housebreaking. And I've got many stories of just everything that goes along with that lifestyle.
And along the way, you were also sexually abused.
I was sexually abused. My brother and I were sexually abused by friends of my mom. And that was a very traumatic and awkward experience and hard to process. And I only got to process that many years later when I was a Christian. But when I did get round to it, I actually spoke to the guy on the phone when I was a Christian, and I said to him, I want you to know that I forgive you. I'm a Christian. I forgive you. And he was worried that I would lay a charge against him and there'd be some criminal activity. And I said, you don't have anything to worry about from my side because I forgive you.
That's an amazing, gift of God, that kind of, forgiveness. So you like to surf, you didn't much like school, you were a male stripper, which your wife likes to bug you about. Your brother Eric, he was younger than you, he became a Christian, and that affected you.
So he was 2 years younger than me. We grew up in the same room together. We had different fathers, but we were as close as brothers could be. Loved him to bits. He was what I would say, the good in the world, and I would consider myself the bad in the world. And so we were living together at the time. He was around 18, 19 years old. And I knew him from the day he was born, and I knew everything about him. And he was always kind of messy, and he would leave stuff flying around, and he was very laid back. But he was a beautiful person. And so I come home one day into this apartment that we're sharing, and all his clothes are packed away, and his blue eyes are just sparkling. And he's rambling on about Jesus. And honestly, I knew nothing about God. And I thought to myself, my brother's been abducted by aliens.
Okay, because it was such a radical change.
Such a radical change. He was a different person. Not only could I see it in his eyes, but I saw it in his lifestyle. Everything in his life that was chaotic and disordered and seemed to be going nowhere was ordered, disciplined. He went back to study. He was studying technical drawing or whatever it is. I forget the name of it now. But anyway, he was studying again. He got his life together, and he was preaching to me day after day. And a group of his friends, the youth from our church, would come to our house, have a Bible study on a Tuesday night, and I was doing lines of Coke on our glass table. And they would say, is your brother saved? And he would go, no. And they would say, okay. And they would go into my room and pray.
Wow.
And they would pray for my salvation. And I would get home drunk I can't even remember why I would do this, but I'd get on my knees besides my bed, drunk, and I would say, if there is a God out there, I need you to get me out of the life I'm in, because I was so ingrained in sin.
And you had trauma. I mean, Eric's father, your stepfather, he was murdered.
He was murdered.
And Eric did struggle in his Christian walk, and he was killed in an accident.
Yeah. So he was radically saved and beautiful Christian, made some amazing friends, was in an amazing church, and was preaching the gospel to everybody, and he was a real example. And then within a couple of months, he started to backslide, and he started to go back to his old group of friends and getting back into the drug circle. And then he had a car accident and died. And I just recently got saved and done the Alpha course and totally seen my life turned upside down. And I was so shocked that as a new Christian, this would happen to me.
Right. Like, what? And for people watching the program, when we say the word saved, we mean beginning a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
So you had these things happen, a lot of trauma, the way that you're raised. How were you able to stay, growing in your relationship with Jesus?
The first few years were really rough as a Christian. I got saved, I left all my friends, I started a brand new lifestyle. I was radical. I was going to church 3 times on a Sunday, prayer meeting, home group. Any meeting that was happening, I was there. So I was absolutely sold out. In that first year of becoming a Christian, my brother died, and he was my only family. So my whole world was turned upside down. It was devastating. I had got married to a dancer, and she left me in the first 6 months of marriage.
And you're like at 23 years old.
I'm at like 23 years old.
Yeah.
Just became a Christian, just given my life to the Lord. Brother dies, wife leaves me, and at the same time, God's doing what I call couch therapy, where I'd never read a book. I was 22 years old. I just got saved, never read a book. And I'm not even joking, not even a comic book. I wasn't a reader. And God said to me, get on the couch and read a book. And started probably like 2 years of couch therapy, where I just read hundreds and hundreds of books, marriage books, any Christian book I could get my hands on. And God was massaging and working through all of the emotional trauma, all the physical trauma. And also the other thing was, obviously I was a survivor. Spent my whole life surviving. And so there was a lot of things that God had to do to get me to a new state.
He got you to a new state, and then you're at a prayer meeting and you spot this woman and you said, you stay away from her. Well, we'll find out if you stayed away from her when we come back on 100 Huntley Street. Angie, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you.
So before we talk to you, I want to get back to this prayer meeting, and you spot this lady. Tell me what happens.
So I read the scripture in the Bible where it says, he who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord. So in my personality and character type, I just went around looking for a wife. Any Christian girl who had no baggage and would be keen on me was fair game. And so I kind of hunted down a few Christian girls in our church, and our pastors were keeping an eye on me, good people that they were. And one day I walk into this prayer meeting, and I see this amazing, wonderful woman standing there who wasn't from our church. I knew she wasn't from our church, and so I immediately ran over there and introduced myself and said, hey, I actually just asked her straight out. I said, are you married?
Okay.
And she said, no. And I said, do you want to be? And there was a whole backstory as to why I would go and ask that question outright, because we were a young church, lots of Christians, we were getting married, people were kind of moving really quickly to get married. And so I was kind of like not going to take any time to ask the question. And then we kind of got together. I'll let her share more on that later.
So Angie, knowing the background of this guy, I mean, what were you thinking?
I wasn't really worried about background at all, because we all seen the same. As children of God, we all seen the same, no matter what we've done. So it didn't really make a difference to me. And also, the Lord speaks to me in dreams, and I'd had a dream of what I thought it looked exactly like Gary.
So you meet him, but he's a little bit mixed up. And he goes off, and he's engaged to another woman.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking? Like, maybe this dream wasn't true? Or?
So again, I went to work in a hospital for a year. We do community service in South Africa, and I went to go work in a township, and I really spent a lot of time praying that year and trusting that if Gary and I were meant to be together, then the Lord would bring us back together. And I actually had another dream, and a very clear dream, that Gary was engaged to somebody else. And then when he came back and he announced that he was engaged to somebody else, I felt like I was already prepared to close the door, and that
and move on.
And move on.
Because he'd been in Zimbabwe, he'd been in England, even came here to Canada.
Canada, yeah.
And I mean, I know a lot of people watching going like, why would you even give this guy a second thought?
Well, I really believe that when you give your heart to somebody, or when you say to the Lord, like, my heart belongs to you, you decide who I should marry, I really felt that it was clear that that he was the man that I should marry. And so I was just waiting it out and praying and trusting, and if it was meant to be, then I knew it would be.
So Gary, how did you get over some of these things? And everybody has their own story. Obviously your brother Eric, unfortunately he was killed at a young age, didn't have opportunity to work through that. Yeah. But for you, it's been a journey from, the abuse, the drugs, the alcohol, the abandonment you felt. How have you been able to overcome that?
I think the first couple of years of Christianity, I was just legalistic. I knew God was good. I knew he was real. But I don't think I had that father-son relationship with him. And I was actually praying at a lake here in Canada when I came across here. And I had this incredible encounter with God where I was praying and I was saying, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm just going around in circles. This is too big for me. And I felt like God said to me, you're a survivor. You're not a son. And for me, that was the biggest turning point in my walk with the Lord. When he started to address me as a son and started to teach me that if I wanted to really make a difference in my own life and in the life of others, I needed to be a son and not a survivor. And that for me was huge. The one question I was having a dialogue with him, the one question he said to me, which was the end of the conversation basically, because he said, do you know you've never asked me who you should marry? And what son would not ask their own father, what do you think of the girl that I'm dating? Or who do you think I should marry? And for me, that really redefined my whole Christian walk and helped me to deal with a lot of the issues a lot easier, because everything I did and thought of then was through the filter, the lens of I'm actually a son of God. He's my father. I'm not abandoned. I'm not broken. I'm not lost. And it just became so much easier for me. Everything kind of became clear. Everything was in focus.
Angie, we're almost out of time, but tell me about the power of prayer for this guy, for your marriage, and even your journey here to Canada.
Yeah, the power of prayer. I can't really say enough about it. I think the word power is just so small sometimes because, wow, God is so real and He hears our heart's desires. He really does. And I've learned through prayer just to trust Him so, so deeply. And to think that just the other day I was sitting back praying for this man to be my husband, and now we've been already married for so long. Yeah, it's powerful.